the 62-year-old woman slapped by her daughter-in-law at the wedding. Everyone expected me to endure it silently. 5 minutes later, I walked back into the reception, holding the deed of ownership for the venue itself, and when the embossed seal tapped against the microphone, the entire ballroom stopped breathing. My name is Evelyn Hart. I am 62 years old, and today, at my son's wedding, I am wearing a slate blue dress. My silver hair is pulled back in a neat chignon, a hairstyle I have worn for decades, one that Sienna once called funerary. The wedding is exactly as she designed it. Silver Willow Manor in Riverton, Colorado, gleaming under the afternoon sun. The light pours through the massive glass roof of the grand hall, catching the thousands of tiny fairy lights woven through the birch branches of the arbor. It is breathtaking, and it is cold. Sienna Caldwell, my new daughter-in-law, finds me standing near the towering floral arrangement. She is radiant in white, her smile sharp. The videographer, catching her movement, swings his bright light onto us. Sienna leans in, the lace on her veil scratching my arm. She smiles for the camera, but her voice, hissed through clenched teeth, is only for me. Don't embarrass my son, Evelyn. Before I can form a reply, her hand swings. The sound is a sharp crack, loud and ugly, echoing off the marble floor and the high glass ceiling. It cuts straight through the polite applause for the recessional. The string quartet falters, a violin squeaking into silence. In the sudden quiet, the only sound is the rapid, frantic clicking of camera shutters. I feel the sting blossom across my cheek, a hot, spreading fire. The room freezes. The guests, 200 of them, stare. Whispers erupt, a low, shocked hiss. I see the bridesmaids cluster together, one of them pulling at a sheer decorative curtain as if to shield the bride from my presence. I look at Lucas, my son. He is 35 years old, standing just feet away, frozen. His eyes are wide, his face pale with shock. He looks at me, at the red mark forming on my skin, and then his gaze drops to the floor. He looks away. I do not respond. I do not raise my voice, nor my hand. I simply stand there as the moment stretches, thick and awful. My hand moves, but not to my cheek. My fingers brush the clasp of my handbag, feeling the rigid corner of the thick, wax-sealed envelope inside. A man in a black suit, the venue manager, materializes at my elbow. His face is tight with panic. Mrs. Hart, he murmurs, his voice low and urgent. We must ensure the guest experience, perhaps some air, outside. He is asking me to leave. I am being removed. I nod calmly. I turn, my back straight, and walk out of the grand hall. As I pass the threshold, I hear the MC clear his throat, his voice unnaturally loud as he tries to fill the void. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the champagne tower. I see Sienna. She is watching me go, her head held high, a small, victorious smirk playing on her lips. She believes she has won. She believes she has erased me, the difficult, inconvenient shadow, from her perfect day. In the quiet of the outer corridor, I pull my phone from my purse. I check the time. 17 minutes. 17 minutes until the county assessor's database completes its 9 a.m. update. 17 minutes until the transfer of ownership is finalized on the public record. I compose a single, short text message. Open the envelope on my signal. Sienna mistakes my quiet for weakness. She thinks my life in Larkmere, in my small cottage, is the full sum of who I am. She is wrong. For 30 years. I was the operations director at Harbour and Finch Trusts, a firm that no longer exists. My specialty was not stocks or bonds, it was trouble. I handled distressed assets. I managed properties seized by creditors, estates tangled in litigation, and trusts designed to hide, not protect. I spent my life reading the fine print that other people ignored. I knew how to find leverage in a delinquent tax bill and how to trace ownership through a dozen shell companies. I walked away from it all when I was 58. My mother had a minor stroke, and the fragility of it all struck me. I resigned, cashed out, and moved to Larkmere, just outside Riverton, to be closer to her. After she passed, I stayed. I found I liked the quiet. I liked a life where the most pressing issue was the frost on my hydrangeas. Lucas, my son, never understood that world. He grew up bearing the weight of his father's absence. My husband died in a climbing accident when Lucas was 9, and that loss carved a space in my son that he has tried to fill with other people's approval ever since. He is a good man, a perfectionist, but he is governed by a deep, aching guilt. He will accommodate anyone to avoid a confrontation. He mistakes compliance for kindness. Then Sienna arrived. She came into our lives like a weather front, fast, bright, and crackling with ambition. She was beautiful, driven, and had the can-do attitude that Lucas, in his cautious world, found magnetic. She worked for Northwind Legal Group, a private law firm in Riverton known for its aggressive corporate clients. At first, she was all charm. She brought wine, asked about my garden, and called me Evelyn. Then, slowly, the ground shifted. It was subtle. She would forget to tell me the correct dress code for a restaurant, leaving me conspicuously overdressed. She would compliment my quaint ideas in front of her friends, framing my experience as outdated. They were small, public humiliations, always delivered with a smile, always leaving me without a polite way to object. Soon, the rumours started. I began to hear whispers. A waiter at a cafe where I am a regular asked if I was feeling all right today. A woman at my yoga class offered to drive me home, mentioning she heard I was having trouble with directions. The narrative was being woven. Evelyn Hart is confused. She is getting old. Perhaps Lou Lung, as they say. The source was always vague, but my old instincts die hard. A few quiet inquiries, tracing a specific PR booking for a charity event we both attended, led to a phone number. It belonged to Sienna's junior assistant at Northwind. I knew about Silver Willow Manor long before Sienna ever pinned it to her wedding board. It was habit. I still read the public county notices, the foreclosure listings, the tax liens. It is the financial pulse of a community. I saw the manor listed. I knew it was delinquent on property taxes, heavily leveraged, and quietly in danger of foreclosure. When Lucas told me they had booked it, my blood ran cold. He showed me the contract, and I saw the staggering cost, the non-refundable deposits, the brutal penalty clauses for cancellation. Sienna had pushed him, brushing off his concerns. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime, Lucas," she'd insisted. "We deserve it." I went back to the county records. I noted the parcel identification number. I noted the deadlines for the tax payments. I noted the name of the primary lien holder, my old professional self. The woman from Harbour and Finch clicked back into place. I said nothing to Lucas. I said nothing to Sienna. I have learned, over a long and difficult career, that you do not show your hand until the game is set. You do not correct a rumour. You let the liar overplay their hand. Silence is not surrender. Silence is armor. And it is the one weapon they never see you loading. The rumors were merely the foundation. The real attack arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a certified courier. It was an official notice from the Riverton Probate Division. I was being invited to a mandatory evaluation of civil capacity. The appointment date was scheduled for the exact afternoon Lucas and Sienna were tasting their wedding cakes. A conflict designed to make me look defiant or confused when I failed to appear. I read the petition. The petitioner was not Sienna, but her mother, Lorraine Caldwell. The stated reason was concern for cognitive decline, citing manufactured instances where I had allegedly gotten lost or exhibited severe confusion in public. Attached as Exhibit A was a grainy, time-stamped screenshot. It showed me standing by my car in a dark parking lot. The timestamp read 1:13 a.m. It was meant to look damning, proof of my nocturnal wandering. They conveniently omitted the context. It was the parking lot of St. Jude's Church, and I was attending the midnight vigil for my oldest friend, Martha, who had just passed. I was grieving, not lost, but the real threat was buried in the supplementary filings, a draft petition for an emergency conservatorship. The legal language was sharp and predatory, seeking immediate control over my finances, my property, and my investments. All under the guise of protecting Evelyn Hart from undue influence and self-neglect. My assets, not my well-being. Sienna had miscalculated. She assumed the woman who grew hydrangeas in Larkmere was the only woman I knew how to be. She forgot my 30 years at Harbour and Finch. I did not call Lucas. I did not call a lawyer. Not yet. First, I gathered my own facts. I ignored the court-appointed evaluator. Instead, I drove to Denver, using my maiden name. I booked appointments at 2 separate, highly respected neurology clinics. I paid in cash. For 6 hours. I sat through a battery of cognitive tests, memory recall protocols, and executive function assessments. The results from both facilities were identical, delivered 24 hours later. No evidence of cognitive impairment. Subject exhibits superior executive function and recall. I had my baseline. Next, I made a call to a name I had not used in over 4 years. Parker Vale. Parker was the best forensic IT investigator Harbour and Finch ever kept on retainer. A man who could find digital fingerprints on a wiped hard drive. "Evelyn," he said, when we met for coffee far outside Riverton. "I thought you were retired." "I thought so too," I replied, sliding the probate petition across the table. "I need to know where this really came from. The IP address that filed it electronically. The metadata on the original document. Who paid the filing fee?" Parker called me 48 hours later. His voice was all business. The filing fee was routed through a third-party legal services website, one of those online recommendation platforms. The payment was made by a corporate credit card. It belongs to Northwind Legal Group, Sienna's firm. That was the link. But he had more. I also recovered the metadata from the original draft petition. He continued. The author field was scrubbed, but the revision history shows 3 different users. 2 are paralegals at Northwind. The third, who created the initial document, was Sienna Caldwell. She was building a case to have me declared incompetent. The rumors, the missed appointment, the falsified evidence. It was a systematic plan to strip me of my credibility. And then, Parker gave me the final piece. He had accessed a shared calendar Sienna used for wedding planning. hidden under vendor coordination. "There is an entry for June 3rd, Parker said, his voice flat. 3 days after the wedding. The entry is short, just 3 acronyms and a date. I knew what he was going to say. POA, deed, close, 6-3. Power of attorney, deed, closing, June 3rd. My breath caught. It was not just about control. It was about my property, my house, my investments. They intended to use the wedding as the final emotional hammer, use my predictable distress as proof of instability, and then seize control of everything I owned the following Monday morning. I sat there in the quiet of my cottage, the 2 medical reports declaring my sanity on the table next to the court summons declaring my instability. I understood. Sienna was not just a difficult daughter-in-law. She was an adversary. This was not a family dispute. It was a hostile takeover. I changed my strategy immediately. You cannot argue with a rumor. You cannot reason with a lie. Trying to prove my sanity to Lucas, who was so desperate for this new family, would be futile. It would only make me look defensive and, ironically, unstable. No, I would not fight the narrative. I would neutralize the tools. She wanted to play a game of assets. She wanted to talk about deeds. Fine. We would talk about deeds. Sienna was focused on her probate filing, on the narrative of my decline. I was focused on the Riverton County Assessor's public ledger. My old habits from Harbour and Finch meant I checked the delinquent property lists every morning with my coffee. I watched the file for Silver Willow Manor. The foreclosure auction notice was set. But then, just as Sienna was finalizing her invitation list, the status changed. The primary lien holder, a commercial bank in Denver, must have gotten nervous about the publicity of an auction. The status switched from auction scheduled to right of redemption active. That was the opening. The bank did not want a messy public auction. They just wanted their money. They were now legally permitted to sell the right of redemption, the debt, and the title attached to it, to the first private party willing to pay the full outstanding amount. I could not move as Evelyn Hart. That name was already being painted as incompetent, a target for the probate court. Any large financial move under my name would trigger the very oversight Sienna was trying to impose. I called Marla Keene. Marla is a trust and estate lawyer I vetted years ago. She is precise, discreet, and understands complex asset transfers. We met in a quiet diner 30 miles outside Riverton. In less than an afternoon, we established the Juniper Hollow Trust. It was a blind trust. Marla was the sole named trustee. My name was nowhere on the Articles of Incorporation. I was an anonymous beneficiary, invisible. This was the gamble. I liquidated a significant portion of my long-term bonds, instruments I had not planned to touch for another decade. I combined it with my core savings. It was everything. I wired the entire sum to the trust's new account. The next day, Marla Keene, acting on behalf of the Juniper Hollow Trust, contacted the bank in Denver. She offered to pay the full redemption amount, the entire delinquent tax bill, all accrued penalties, the full remaining balance of the mortgage. It was a single, clean wire transfer. The bank, relieved, signed over the redemption rights and the conditional title. The condition was simple. The Riverton County Assessor's Office had to formally process and record the title transfer. Marla's clerk hand-delivered the paperwork. The county confirmed it was in the queue. It would be processed and updated on the public database, visible to the world, within 72 hours. I timed it to the hour. The final, irreversible recording of the deed was scheduled for 9 a.m., the morning of the wedding. Now. I owned the venue. But the existing management company, the people Sienna had signed her extravagant contract with, was still operating the business. Marla approached them, not as my lawyer, but as the representative of the new owners. She didn't terminate their lease. She offered them an accommodation. The Juniper Hollow Trust, she explained, was reviewing all vendor contracts. She proposed a simple, one-page addendum to their existing event agreements, including the Hart-Caldwell wedding. The addendum stated that all events were subject to immediate cancellation and removal if the new owners determined there was a significant security or liability risk on the premises. The existing managers, terrified of losing their entire business to a new owner they had never met, signed it instantly. I bought a separate, comprehensive event liability insurance policy, again, in the name of the Juniper Hollow Trust. It covered everything, including media fallout. Finally, I prepared the package, the thick, wax-sealed envelope I carried in my purse today. Inside, a certified copy of the newly recorded deed naming the Juniper Hollow Trust as owner of record, a copy of Marla's official letter to the venue management, and the newly signed security addendum. I had delivered an identical envelope to the venue manager yesterday. My instructions to him were precise. Do not open this. A representative of the new owner will be present at the event. You are to open this only when she identifies herself. He had nodded, obviously assuming I was just the difficult mother of the groom engaged in some petty drama. Why today? Why at the wedding? Because Sienna chose this stage. She chose 200 guests and multiple cameras to be the audience for my humiliation. She wanted to build her case. In the quiet of a probate court, the truth can be buried, spun, and dismissed as the ramblings of a confused old woman. But in the glare of professional spotlights, with 200 phones recording, the truth becomes an event. It cannot be easily distorted. I sent one last message to Parker Vale. I will move at the start of the reception. The moment you see the embossed seal on the deed, touch the microphone on the live feed. You post the entire file. There was one final piece, the prenuptial agreement. Parker had retrieved a copy of the final draft Sienna had pushed Lucas to sign. Lucas, in his trusting haste, had barely glanced at it. I read every line. Buried deep in Section 4 was the clause Sienna must have thought was her masterstroke. It stipulated that if any of Lucas's immediate relatives were deemed incapacitated, she would gain managerial rights over their assets. But she had added a standard fraud clause. Common in Northwind contracts, all claims to any assets were rendered null and void if it was proven that one party engaged in fraudulent misrepresentation or deceit to secure the agreement. She had built her own trap. I was merely providing the stage to spring it. I tried to speak to Lucas. I owed him that. I cornered him near the grand staircase 2 weeks before the ceremony, away from Sienna. My voice was low, urgent. Lucas, I need you to listen. Sienna's mother has filed a petition. She is trying to have me declared legally incompetent. He flinched, a physical recoil, his eyes darting toward the ballroom. Mom, please, just stop. Don't do this. They are alleging I wander, that I am a danger to myself. It is a lie. Lucas, it's a prelude to a conservatorship. I don't want to be involved in this, he said, his voice tight, angry. Whatever fight you are having with Lorraine, leave me out of it. I am just trying to get married. He did not believe me, or rather, he did not want to. Sienna found me later, placing a proprietary hand on Lucas's arm. Her tone was a mockery of sympathy. Evelyn, we are just worried. You seem so scattered lately. Your mum just needs structure. Lucas, we just want to help. We just want to help, Lucas repeated, his gaze fixed on the floor. He was desperate for her version to be true. Is that why you are having me evaluated? I asked, looking directly at Sienna. She did not blink. It's just a precaution. Speaking of, she turned to Lucas, pulling a file from her briefcase. Honey, I still need you to sign these vendor authorizations. They are just minor power of attorney forms for the caterer and the AV team. It just lets me make decisions if they cannot reach you on the day. Lucas grabbed a pen and signed the stack without reading a single page. He was being groomed, trained to sign over authority, piece by piece. I made one final attempt. I drove to his office with the sealed envelopes from the 2 Denver clinics. I placed them on his desk. What's this? He asked, not looking up from his computer. My cognitive test results from 2 independent neurology centers. They prove, medically, that my mind is perfectly sound. They prove the petition is a fraud. He looked at the envelopes. He saw the medical insignia. He picked them up, then placed them, unopened, into his desk drawer. Thanks, Mom. I'm sure it's all fine. I'm just buried in work right now. He did not open them. He did not want the truth. He wanted peace. And the truth, he knew, was not peaceful. He was making his choice. He was choosing to be blind. That night, he called me. His voice was strained. Mom, I can feel the tension. Everyone can, please. I am begging you. Do not turn my wedding into a war zone. The silence on the line stretched. A profound, hollow sadness settled over me. Oh, Lucas, I said, my voice quiet. I am not turning the wedding into a war zone. I am turning the war zone into a wedding. He did not understand. He hung up. But the cracks were showing in him. He knew. He simply lacked the courage to face it. Parker Vale sent me a security still taken 3 days ago. It was from a private notary service downtown, Sienna, her mother Lorraine, and a junior assistant from Northwind Legal. They were smiling. On the desk, waiting to be signed, was a blank, durable power of attorney form. They were just waiting for the wedding, for the manufactured emotional breakdown, to move. Lucas himself told me, though he tried to frame it as a joke. He had come home early and overheard Sienna on the phone in her home office. She sounded sharp, angry. It has to be done, she was saying. Finalize the books by 3. It needs to close. When she saw him, she hung up quickly, her smile bright and brittle. Just locking in the DJ. Honey? He needed the final playlist, said he was closing his books for the day at 3. Lucas relayed this to me, laughing nervously. She's just so organized. You know. But I saw the doubt in his eyes. He is a financial analyst. He knows a DJ does not finalize books. He knows close is the language of a transaction, of a legal maneuver. He knew she was lying. He knew. And he was doing nothing. He was paralyzed, ashamed of the woman he was marrying, and even more ashamed of his own weakness. That was when I knew. I could not drag him into this fight. I could not force him to choose, because I knew he would choose poorly. I would not put him in that position. I would not ask him to defend me. I would simply arm him. I would show him the raw, undeniable, public truth. He would have to see. They would all have to see. The recessional music faded. Lucas and Sienna stood under the glass roof, accepting kisses and congratulations. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and expensive champagne. Guests were beginning to move from the ceremony chairs toward the grand reception hall. Sienna broke away from her parents and walked directly toward me. The videographer, ever present, tracked her movement, his light bright and intrusive. She stopped so close I could see the intricate stitching on her bodice. She smiled, a wide, dazzling smile for the camera, but her eyes were like chips of ice. She leaned in, her veil brushing my shoulder, and whispered, "You'll be sitting in the overflow section, by the kitchens. Don't ruin the wide shots." I did not raise my voice. I simply looked at her and shook my head, a small, definitive gesture. No. Her smile tightened. Her hand came up so fast I barely registered the movement. It was the crack of the sound that hit me first, sharp and brutal in the high-ceilinged room. Then the sting, a white-hot bloom across my left cheek. The force of the slap broke the clasp on my pearl necklace, the one my husband gave me on our 10th anniversary. The pearls scattered, bouncing and rolling with tiny clicks across the white marble floor. Silence. A vast, echoing void where the polite chatter had been. The string quartet, preparing for their next piece, went dead. The MC, standing by the podium, let out a sharp, dry cough that sounded like a gunshot. The videographer, to his credit, never stopped filming. I saw the red light on his camera aimed directly at my face, capturing the red mark already forming. In a desperate attempt to fill the void, the bandleader struck a note, and the quartet stumbled into a ragged, upbeat jazz riff that was jarring and grotesque. I did not react. I did not touch my cheek. I did not cry out. I slowly bent down, my knees protesting, and picked up the broken strand of my necklace. I looked at Lucas. He was standing, frozen, his face ashen. His eyes met mine for one terrible second, and then they darted away. He looked at his shoes. He looked at his new wife. He did not look at me. The venue manager was at my side, his hand hovering near my elbow, not quite daring to touch me. "Mrs. Hart, please. This way. We must insist." I was being escorted out. I clutched the pearls in my fist and walked, my back straight, through the arched doorway and into the quiet of the main lobby. As I left, I saw Sienna. She was delicately adjusting her veil, smoothing the lace. She turned back to her guests, a faint, victorious smile on her lips, as if she had just swatted a fly. The lobby was empty, the marble cool. I stood there for a moment, the adrenaline making my heart pound. The main door opened, and Marla Keene slipped inside, all business in her dark grey suit. She carried a slim document folder. She did not waste time with pleasantries. She placed the folder in my hand. "It is done. Evelyn," she said, her voice crisp. "The county confirmed receipt and final recording at 8:51 a.m. The public database updates in exactly 9 minutes. My phone vibrated in my purse. A text from Parker Vale. "Quick update. They just refiled. The conservatorship hearing was bumped to Monday morning, 9 a.m. They're not waiting. They're being careful. They plan to use whatever happens today as evidence of immediate risk." I typed a short reply. "Thank you. Today, we only talk about the land." I opened the folder Marla had given me. Inside, on top, was the new, official deed. I ran my thumb over the raised, embossed seal of Riverton County, the heavy, cotton fiber paper felt substantial, real. It was no longer a plan. It was a fact. The paper seemed to glow under the ornate lobby chandelier. I looked at the grand, sweeping clock on the wall. The reception was scheduled to begin. The speeches, the toasts. My pulse steadied. The sting on my cheek cooled. It was time to face them. I walked back into the grand hall. The heavy oak doors closed behind me with a soft, definitive boom, quieting the lobby's echo. On the main stage, the master of ceremonies was beaming, his voice amplified by the microphone. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll direct your attention here, Lucas and Sienna will sign their beautiful keepsake marriage certificate." A small table with a gaudy feathered pen had been placed center stage. The music swelled. The videographer zoomed in. I began to walk. Not down the side aisle, but straight down the center, on the white carpet runner still littered with flower petals. The guests, turning their heads, saw me first. A ripple of whispers. Lucas saw me, his face stiffening. Sienna, pen in hand, turned. Her smile vanished, replaced by a flash of pure, undiluted fury. The MC, seeing the disturbance, tried to speak over it. A beautiful moment. I did not stop until I reached the steps of the stage. I looked up at him. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm but carrying in the sudden hush. "I need to borrow your microphone." He stammered. "Ma'am, this is not the time." "It is, I'm afraid." I turned to the venue manager, who was rushing toward me, his face pale and sweating. "There is a pressing legal matter regarding the venue itself. It must be addressed now." "Mrs. Hart, I asked you to leave." The manager hissed, his hands fluttering uselessly. "You did?" I agreed. "Now, I must ask you to open the sealed envelope I provided to your office yesterday. The one you were instructed to open when the new owner identified herself." His eyes went wide. He knew exactly what I meant. "I am identifying myself," I said. He fumbled for his keys, unlocked a small podium drawer, and pulled out the identical thick, wax-sealed envelope. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely break the seal. "Read the letter from the trustee, please," I said. Aloud. He unfolded the paper. It's from a lawyer, Marla Keene. It says, "On behalf of the new owner of record, Juniper Hollow Trust, this letter serves as formal notification." He looked up, panicked. "Keep reading," I said. "That pursuant to the addendum signed on May 20th, all existing event contracts are subject to review and immediate termination." As he spoke, the massive projector screen above the stage, the one intended for a slideshow of Sienna's childhood photos, flickered. The image of the happy couple dissolved. It was replaced by a stark, black and white screenshot of the Riverton County Assessor's public record. One line was highlighted in yellow parcel ID 772-9B. "Owner of record Juniper Hollow Trust." The whispers stopped. The entire room, all 200 guests, fell into a profound, suffocating silence. The DJ, who had just started a soft ambient track, fumbled with his console. The music died. I stepped onto the stage, took the live microphone from the MC's frozen hand, and walked to the small table. I placed my own envelope, the one I had carried, on the table directly in front of Sienna, covering the keepsake certificate. I tapped the embossed seal on the deed. "You just slapped the owner of the venue," I said. My voice was amplified, clear, and cold. echoing through the glass-roofed hall. Sienna stared at the document as if it were a snake. I turned back to the manager. The addendum you just read allows the new owner to terminate any event contract immediately if a significant security risk or liability is created by a guest. An unprovoked physical assault on the owner, captured by multiple cameras, qualifies as a significant security risk. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Therefore, I continued, the Hart-Caldwell wedding contract is hereby terminated, effective immediately. Sienna's mother, Lorraine, lunged forward. You cannot do this. We paid. We have a contract. Your contract is with the previous management, and it is now void, I said, not looking at her. I addressed the stunned guests. However, you are all innocent parties in this. You came to celebrate. The Juniper Hollow Trust will honour the catering and bar service for the next 2 hours, free of charge, as our guests. Please, eat and drink. Then, I turned back to the stage. But the wedding party, Sienna, Lucas, and her parents are now trespassing. I require you to move to the outer garden immediately for a private discussion. You have 5 minutes. Sienna finally found her voice. A low, shaking hiss. You are ruining my wedding. I looked at her, my face as hard as the marble floor. I am not disrupting a wedding. I am terminating a fraud that was scheduled to take place on my property. This is not a discussion, I said, my voice cutting through Sienna's protest. This is a presentation of facts. I looked past her, to the AV technician who had frozen by his booth. I have a USB drive for you, I said, pulling a small silver stick from my pocket. It's for the auxiliary screen. Please play the file marked Exhibit B. The technician looked at the venue manager, who, holding the letter from Marla Keene, just nodded numbly. The technician took the drive. The smaller screen beside the main stage, the one intended for the bar menu, lit up. It was not a slideshow. It was a series of scanned documents and audio files, the ones Parker Vale had compiled. First, an invoice. Strategic Communications Package, Client Northwind Legal Group. Below it, a line item, Reputational Management Services, Riverton, Dissemination of Targeted Narratives. And at the bottom, the payment record, paid in full via Northwind corporate card, authorized S. Caldwell. The smear campaign, the rumors of my confusion, all paid for. The screen changed. It was a security camera clip, audio included, from a legal consultation service. We saw Sienna's mother, Lorraine, on a video call. We just need the evaluation, she was saying, her voice thin and reedy. Sienna says it's for the best, especially now that she's, thinking about the baby. To lock things in, we have to protect the family line. Thinking about the baby, a tool, a way to trap my son completely. The image changed again, a photograph, the one Parker had sent me. Sienna, her mother, and the assistant, all smiling at the notary's office. And there, on the desk, the blank, durable power of attorney form. But this was a high-resolution image. You could see the handwritten sticky note attached to the top corner. 4 words in Sienna's sharp, angular script, sign right after ceremony. Then, a final image. A screenshot of an internal message from the Northwind servers. It was from Sienna to a senior partner. We need to ensure the Silver Willow event goes forward. It's the perfect public stage to handle the old lady. The penalties for cancellation will ruin him, and he will be completely dependent. It finalizes the asset protection plan. She was going to use the debt from the wedding itself as the final lever to break Lucas, to make him compliant in the conservatorship. A low, horrified moan came from the crowd. Several guests, who had been filming discreetly, now held their phones up openly, their faces lit by the screens. The live stream view counts were exploding. I looked at Lucas. He was shaking, his whole body vibrating with a silent, contained rage. But his eyes were not on me. They were on Sienna. And for the first time, there was no confusion, no weakness. There was only a terrible, cold clarity. The pieces, the unopened envelopes, the overheard phone call, the frantic signing of documents, it all clicked into place for him. Sienna saw his face. She saw the guests. She tried one last, desperate pivot. She laughed. A brittle, ugly sound. "This is absurd," she announced, her voice too loud. "This is a setup. She is a confused, vindictive old woman. She's fabricated all of this because she's angry. It's exactly what I was trying to prevent. She is unwell." "Am I?" I asked, my voice dropping, pulling the focus of the entire room back to me. I reached into the folder Marla had given me. I pulled out 2 more documents. The original sealed reports from the Denver Neurology Clinic and the Pennington Cognitive Institute. I walked over and placed them on the table, right on top of the deed, right in front of her. "Here are 2 comprehensive, independent neurological evaluations," I said, "conducted under an alias, paid for in cash. They were completed last week. They both conclude that my cognitive function is not just sound. It is in the superior percentile for my age. I am not confused. I am not Lu Lung. I am perfectly, completely competent." I tapped the documents. Which means this was never about help. This was never protection. This was a calculated, fraudulent attempt to steal my assets by having me falsely declared incompetent, and you used my son to do it. A collective "oh" swept the room, a sound of dawning, horrified understanding. The narrative had shifted. The power had moved. The story was no longer hers to tell. It was mine. The stage was silent. The air, once filled with music and laughter, was now brittle, stretched thin. Sienna's face was a mask of disbelief and rage. Lucas, beside her, looked hollowed out, as if he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. The guests were frozen, a sea of shocked faces. I turned off the microphone and set it down. I looked at my son, not at his wife. "Lucas," I said, my voice quiet, no longer amplified. "Walk with me, to the terrace." He obeyed, his movements stiff, robotic. Sienna started to follow, but I held up a hand. "Just my son. For now." We stepped through the open French doors onto the stone terrace. The air outside was cool, a relief from the suffocating tension in the hall. Below us, the gardens sloped down to the river. "Mom," he started, his voice cracking. "You don't have to choose me." "Lucas," I said, cutting him off, turning to face him. "You don't have to choose your wife. But today, right now, you have to choose the truth." I reached into my handbag and pulled out 2 final envelopes. They were plain, white, unsealed. "These are for you to understand what happens next," I said. I handed him the first one, marked A. "That is a full, notarized complaint to the Colorado State Bar Association. It details Sienna's use of firm resources for a fraudulent reputational attack, the filing of a bad faith probate petition, and the conspiracy to commit fraud regarding my assets. It includes the testimony from Parker Vale and all the evidence you just saw. If I file this, her career is over, not just at Northwind. Everywhere. He held it as if it were burning him. This, I said, handing him the second envelope. B, is the alternative. It is an agreement, a way out. He looked at it. She goes back to that microphone. She makes a full, public apology. Not for misunderstanding, for lying, for fabricating the story about my cognitive decline and for filing the petition. She agrees, in writing, to resign from Northwind Legal, effective immediately. She will personally reimburse the full cost of the smear campaign. And, needless to say, all petitions for conservatorship are withdrawn. That is the offer. Sienna had followed us, her mother trailing behind her. She had heard every word. You have until the cake is cut, I said, looking past Lucas to her. That is your deadline. Sienna's eyes were sharp, calculating. The shock was gone, replaced by the negotiator. And what? She scoffed. We do that, and you just give it all back. You give us the deed. I almost smiled. Oh, no. You misunderstand completely. The deed is not part of this negotiation. I looked at her. As of 9 a.m. this morning, the Juniper Hollow Trust, which owns this land, was converted into an irrevocable charitable trust. Its sole purpose is to provide community and event space for local non-profits. This land is not for sale. It will never be yours. This is not about property. Sienna, this is about consequences. You did this to me, she shrieked, her voice cracking. You and my mother. I held up a hand. I am offering one condition of mercy. If you take full, sole responsibility for this entire plan, I will not include your mother's name in any public statement or complaint. I will allow her to retain her dignity, but you have to take the deal. Now. It was Lucas who spoke. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a pain that tore at my heart. Mum, he whispered. Why did you let it get this far? Why did you stay silent for so long? I looked at my son, the man I had protected his whole life, the man I had failed by being too quiet. Yes, I do, I said, my voice thick. I regret every day I stayed silent, thinking it would keep the peace. I regret it. But today, Lucas, I made sure I spoke loud enough for you to hear me. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from Parker. Local news blog is queued. Holding on your go command. The neutral version is ready. The full evidence version is also ready. Your call? Lucas stared back into the hall. He saw the guests. He saw his colleagues in the front row, whispering to their wives. He saw Sienna's partners from Northwind, their faces like stone, already distancing themselves. He saw, for the first time, exactly who stood where when the lights came on. He straightened his back. The paralysis was gone. He walked past Sienna, past me, and back into the grand hall. He picked up the microphone. Everyone, he said, his voice hard, echoing. It was a voice I had not heard since he was a young litigator, before Sienna. I need 5 minutes with my wife. Alone. We will be in the bridal suite. He looked at Sienna. It was not a request. Now. She stared at him, her mouth open, but she saw the look on his face, and she followed. He closed the heavy wooden door behind them. The countdown had begun. It was less than 5 minutes. The heavy wooden door of the bridal suite opened. Lucas stepped out first. His face was set, determined. Sienna followed. She was not the same woman who had entered. Her veil was gone, and her expensive headpiece was clutched in her hand. In the other hand, she held a single sheet of paper from the hotel stationery. It was covered in her sharp, angry handwriting. She did not look at Lucas. She walked past him, directly to the stage, up the steps, and stood before the microphone. The room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the video camera. She unfolded the paper. Her hand was shaking. She began to read. She started, her voice a dry rasp. I, Sienna Caldwell, fully admit the following. She read it all. She admitted to fabricating the narrative of Evelyn Hart's cognitive decline. She admitted to conspiring with her mother to file a fraudulent petition for conservatorship. She admitted to using her corporate card at Northwind Legal to fund a public relations smear campaign. And she admitted her intent to gain a durable power of attorney after the ceremony to seize control of Evelyn's assets. When she finished, there was no applause, just a vast, cold silence. Marla Keene stepped forward from the side, placing the agreement from envelope B and a pen on the podium. Sienna signed it. She signed the resignation from Northwind. She signed the personal guarantee to reimburse the full cost of the PR campaign. She signed the consent to undergo professional ethics counseling. In return, her mother, who was weeping silently in a corner, was not named. She was done. She stepped back, the paper trembling in her hand. Lucas then stepped forward, taking the microphone. He looked out at the 200 guests, his friends, his colleagues, his family. The prenuptial agreement, he said, his voice clear and strong, contained clauses based on fraudulent misrepresentation. Therefore, all post-nuptial clauses are suspended. This marriage, this event, is paused, indefinitely, pending a full legal review. A wave of gasps and frantic whispers broke the silence. The event was over. I walked up to the podium as Lucas stepped away. I took my official, recorded deed. I unzipped my purse and took out my personal embosser, the one I used at Harbour and Finch, with the seal of the Juniper Hollow Trust. I placed a copy of the deed in front of the venue manager. I pressed the embosser down, the click of the seal echoing. This is for your records. I then took the microphone one last time and spoke to the guests. Please, all of you. You came to share in what you believed was a day of love. Do not let our business ruin your afternoon. The food and drink are, as I said, provided by the trust for the next 2 hours. Please, enjoy yourselves. In the background, I knew what was happening. Parker Vale was uploading the evidence file, not the inflammatory one, the neutral, factual one, sent to the state bar. He sent the neutral version of the story to the local press blog, the one that reported facts, not scandal. It was not about public humiliation. It was about a public record. Sienna, her face pale, walked up to Lucas. She pulled the massive diamond ring from her finger. She tried to press it into his hand, whispering one last, desperate thing to him. He did not take it. He just looked at her, his eyes dead. We will speak through our lawyers. She threw the ring. It skittered across the marble and came to rest near the remnants of my broken pearl necklace. She turned and, without her veil, without her husband, she walked out of the hall. I walked off the stage and back to my seat in the front row. As I passed, a few guests, strangers, stood up. They began to clap. Not a loud, celebratory applause. It was a slow, steady, respectful sound. They were not clapping for the scandal. They were clapping for the boundary. I sat for a moment, then stood and walked out to the terrace, away from the noise, into the cool afternoon air. The mountain breeze felt clean. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a system notification from the Riverton County Public Database. The 9 a.m. update was fully processed and locked. The status for parcel 77209B now read: in final. Digital print, Juniper Hollow Trust, status closed and recorded. I did not take anything from anyone. I did not steal a wedding. I simply returned the truth to its proper place. I put my name, my seal, on what was mine. And this time, I will not be silent again. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so glad you are here. Please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I would love to connect and share our thoughts. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, give this video a like, and hit that hype button to help this story be heard by more people.